Hey everyone, welcome back to the Amplified Action Podcast. My name's Jake. That's Andre. Today we're going to be talking about when it's useful to learn from others and when it's not. And I'm just going to start off by saying I think that's a trick question because it's always useful to learn, right? It's not always useful to follow the information. You can learn a lot from people who give bad advice. I will say that. So we're going to dive in. We're going to get pretty actionable. We have 3 signs of when you should follow people's advice, and then we have some ideas on when you shouldn't be following them. But before we dive in, Andre, do you have any thoughts to kick us off?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing to do when you're trying to learn from somebody is to measure what you're actually trying to learn and see whether or not they have the results that you're looking for. Because like let's just say you're trying to find a mentor on like Twitter or X or whatever, and they have a whole bunch of followers, but they're in a completely unrelated place. They're not going to be able to teach you how to get what you want. Like somebody who's like very web development focused or something in their big account is it doesn't matter if you're trying to put out nothing but self-improvement coaching or fitness and health. They're just completely different markets, and you have to find somebody that matches up with where you're trying to put yourself.
You're in charge. Like, you have to take charge of this. You can't, trust me, everybody is going to want to sell you advice and give you advice. Everybody is trying to give you some information because they know the way. It's up to you to decide who to take that information from. You have to set the bar because if you just walk around being like, everybody is so smart and I have so much to learn, like you're gonna go completely the wrong direction. You're gonna get a lot of information, but you didn't choose what information in the direction you want to go, and that's, I mean, you could do that for the rest of your life and get zero accomplished. You have to be very deliberate about who you listen to.
Yeah, for sure. Have a vision, see who fits within that kind of vision. Like, oh, I really want to be like this person. Let me go and look at their stuff. Like, is this something that I could do? Is their life one that I'd be willing to actually lead? Get some clarity there. See what people who have worked with them, like how they actually feel about it. Look at some testimonials. Like, just understand what the actual footprint of their life is, not just their digital presence. Like, you have to, if you want their results, you have to understand their life, not just what they're putting out there on the internet or wherever you're getting your information from.
Yeah, and that is the first bullet point we have. So let's just get in. We got three clear tips, and that is the first one is like make sure they have proven results. And not just that they have proven results, but that others have gotten proven results from working with them. And you mentioned the testimonials. Nothing is more powerful than a testimonial. Like, of course, you have to be careful. Like, testimonials, I don't know, they can be fake, they can be paid, etc. Like, I don't know, give people the benefit of the doubt. Generally, they're not. But so much power in a testimonial. I mean, it's like reviews, right? So you go to buy something on Amazon, you're not reading the description. I don't read any description on Amazon. I go to the reviews immediately, and then I analyze, does this seem like a real review? And then I go look at the negative ones and I look at the positive ones. Like, that's where the real information is what people are saying and what results people have had.
Yeah, quantity of reviews matters too, because that if you have a huge quantity of reviews, a huge quantity of testimonials, what are the chances that you have 111 fake testimonials? It's pretty friggin' low, right? So like, you gotta like take that into account. If somebody is willing to do a video testimonial, that's a whole different ball game than just some written blurb, right? If somebody has taken the time to record a video like, hey, I worked with this guy, he really did this and he did this, and it really changed the way I thought about this, and it just skyrocketed my results, whatever. If it feels real, and you can really tell when a video testimonial is real because nobody can hide their nonverbal communication. It's just, I mean, there are people who could do it. Most people can't. So there's just so much genuine. You could trust the review most of the time if it's a video review. So look at the testimonials. If there's video reviews, you probably have to give it more weight because it's more likely that it's a real data point.
Yeah, and we'll put a pin in that trusting your gut too, because we're actually going to talk about that a little bit more in the next section of when we shouldn't be following advice. So put a pin in that idea because I think there's a lot of value there. But number two we have for when you should follow the advice is making sure their values are aligned with yours. We talked about this already a little bit in the intro, but like have that vision of where you're going. There's a lot of people out there who are successful and they may give really good advice, but if their values are not aligned with yours, the advice is not going to work. You can implement the exact same strategy that somebody else implements, and it's going to feel like crap internally, right? And you may outwardly have success, like by whatever metric you're defining, but at what cost is that coming to you internally and how you view the world? Weighing, like looking at how somebody approaches the world and like identifying, okay, here's the values they have, here's how they align with my values, whether it's authenticity or generosity or whatever it may be. So key in who you listen to, because there's a million ways to tackle every problem, but there's, fewer ways that are going to resonate with you and actually improve your life versus make it worse.
Yeah, for sure. And another kind of like somewhat related point, because you're talking about values, and it needs to be aligned for sure. That makes it much more likely that whatever they're offering you as a route or information, whatever information they're offering you is more useful to you. The other thing you need to think about is the actual path that they're taking to get themselves from point A to point B. Like we're on a podcast here. We're doing a little bit of, influencer stuff. We're creating content, right? My advice for somebody who's trying to do something on X, which is primarily text based, they're not going to like see this podcast and be like, okay, he has authority on this completely different method of getting eyeballs. So you have to be comfortable with actually following something close to their path. And that's something I actually had trouble with because I have an X account, I'm trying to grow it, whatever. I'm not really somebody who wants to write long form content. And I was working with somebody who is a long form person, a super high leverage from writing. And I did it for a bit. I was able to execute, but at the end of the day, it left me unbelievably drained because that's not the kind of way that I want to get to the end goal. And the end goal can be the same, but the route taken and the expertise in the type of route that is being taken, it matters a lot because there's a lot of ways to end up with um, a life that's full of well-being. There's a lot of ways to end up with influence on the internet. There's a lot of ways to create a business. You just have to make sure that the values that they have and the things that they emphasize as the real needle movers align with the way you want to do your work.
Choose your own adventure. There's not one way to do anything. There's actually unlimited ways to do everything. And even if nobody has ever done it that way, you could still do it that way. And this is like going back to the trick question, like you can always learn from somebody. You don't actually have to follow their advice, but you can intake, okay, so this person used this platform to do X, Y, Z, and they did it in this way, right? You can, take the principles out of that. And this is a sign of a good teacher too, right? Like, are they teaching you? It's both. There's the principles, there's the foundations, and there's also like the actionable advice. The actionable advice is going to be specific to their path, their specific thing they did. But if they can also package up those principles and make those so that you can take those and apply them elsewhere, that's a good teacher. Like, that's somebody to listen to for sure. And anything there before we move on to the last point?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Make sure that the path that they're providing you jives with your sense of values and the type of work you like to do, because you want it to be sustainable and not really negatively affect your energy.
Yeah, there's more important things than quote unquote success, right? Like if it sucks your soul away, it's just not worth it. Like, you just got to pay attention to the values. Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave it there. I'm passionate about that topic, so I want to go on a rant, but I'll stop right there. We'll save that for another time. The last point we have on when you should follow others' advice is when you understand their incentives. There's a lot of incentives out there. Lots of them are money-based incentives. That's not bad. Like, money is a part of culture. It's a part of how we exchange value. It's quite possibly the best invention that's ever been made so that we could interact with each other, right? Like we have a common thing that we all value that we can share, and I can pay somebody for their time and attention, for their information and their wisdom. Just because somebody's out to make money, it's not a sign. Everybody needs to make money, right? Um, but there's a lot of nuance to incentives. Yeah, I don't know. Your thoughts on incentives?
Yeah, you show me somebody's incentives and I can show you what they're going to do and how they're going to act and how you can frame your interactions with them to keep your best interests at heart, right? And that's it kind of also goes into the values thing. If somebody has values that are more incentive they have an incentive to create success for you, then it changes the whole framing of that relationship. And some of the ways that you can make incentives work for you are like we do it in the corporate world with bonuses um, upon proper performance or metrics or whatever. Getting paid upon your results is a very powerful way to make sure that their incentives are on point. Now, whether you're being paid with money or paid with, say, a video testimonial, um, like you give them a video testimonial or whatever helps their social proof. There's all kinds of different levels of incentives that are not all money based, but money based is the one that we can all understand, right? So yeah, understand the incentives. Make sure that the biases and incentives are not things that are working against you and that they're working for you.
One thing to call out too, and I'm sure most people are aware of this concept when we're talking about incentives. I think it's fair to bring it up because a lot of people get wrecked from this is recognizing pyramid schemes and weird incentives because pyramid schemes specifically are dangerous because they do have good incentives, right? Like generally with a with any like a pyramid scheme or whatever we want to call it, the incentive is there because they want to empower you because they're essentially going to profit off of you being engaged and then that trickles down. So then you profit off somebody else being engaged, but then you also the person above you also profits off of the person below you. So it builds up in a pyramid, right? And we don't have to break down pyramid schemes too deeply, but like be aware of these incentives because at face value, the incentives work. That's why they work so well and why they're so dangerous is because that person is actually looking out for you because they are directly profiting from it, right? But there becomes an end of that profiting. Like somebody gets screwed at the end, and you very well could be that person. Like many people will get screwed. Um, so just be careful with those when we're talking about incentives. Like just because it looks at face value like the incentives are good, this person really has it looking out for me. Like this almost goes back into the second point about values, like values, incentives, etc. All related.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the people who enter into pyramid schemes um, don't really have a full understanding of incentive structures, and it sucks because most of the people that get drawn into pyramid schemes just aren't trusting their gut, or they don't know enough to actually have a gut reaction, right? And our biggest way of getting out of these scammy structures is by trusting our gut, like paying attention to like the cues that someone's giving. It's pretty easy to like disregard an email from a prince from Saudi Arabia that's trying to scam you, but it's like that's easy to do, right? But when somebody is very good at grifting you, then it can be pretty tough.
Yeah, and the problem is they're good at it, right? Like, that's like the main problem here. You have to be aware. There's so many pitfalls, especially with the internet, man. Like when you can't. Another side rant. Like the power of in person communication. Like we evolved that way, right? Like pheromones, like micro expressions in 3D space, not just like 2D on a screen. It's so much easier to get a reaction to somebody when you actually meet them in person. Like shaking their hand. Like I'm not like I gotta have a firm handshake, Sonny. Like I don't mean that, but like you can tell something. There's even talking about shaking somebody's hands. Like you're literally, I was just
Yeah.
listening to this on Huberman where like you shake somebody's hand and people will likely like touch their face or their eye, and it's like the speculation I think is like unconsciously smelling your hand, be like, what information am I picking up off this person's like sweat and their pheromones? Same thing with dating, like why online dating is so crazy. Like you can figure out if you're attracted to somebody, but you have to be in physical space. There's so much more information going on, so just be aware of that. Like on the internet, we're getting a very small fraction of information to make gut decisions as you are in person. So you got to use your brain, um, and really, really use your gut. Even a tiny little signal from your gut could mean something. Could also mean nothing. Be careful, but could mean something.
Yeah, yeah. I like using gut reactions to disqualify, for sure. Like it is because our ability to detect a potential negative situation is much more tuned than a positive situation, right? So trust your gut instincts for things that could go poorly for you. So yeah, yeah, I think it really matters a lot to pay attention when it's something where you're disqualifying something, and it's not quite as applicable for the optimistic leaps. It's way more valuable and tuned for most people in the other direction.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's the perfect segue into when you shouldn't follow people's advice. And I would say that would be a very good one is you just don't like them. Like you just have a bad gut feeling about them. This one is so like immediately when that word comes out of my mouth, I'm like, but wait, there's more. Like I want to like qualify this or like, cause there's so much nuance here. You could also just have really bad judgment. That's also a thing, right? You could also have anxiety, be paranoid, whatever, have a, I don't like, I mean, this is where biases come into play, right? Like, um, like, I was like bullied by I won't say like the group of people. It's not a race. It's a type of person. I'm not like getting into this territory. But there was like a certain look that people have, right? Like it was an in group, a subculture of people who bullied me. I didn't like that subculture for years because I was biased because of that, right? So my perception was terrible. I would immediately write somebody off based on the way they looked. And later growing up and as I matured, it was like, oh, that was just like a total bias that I had. And so you could just have bad judgment too. Like you just have to be careful with it.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody will admit to themselves that they have bad judgment. But how about if we don't have a strong feeling in the positive direction, we can just assume that we're yeah, I don't know. Like how do we deal with that if we don't have good judgment? How do like maybe if you've made several decisions that haven't gone your way, then you need to look more carefully at the incentive structures. Something that involves less gut reaction and a little bit more of the logical part of your brain can really help, right? Because your gut reaction will happen with all of those biases that are subconscious, right? So yeah, I mean, look at your incentive structures. Try and put a lot of thought. Like there are probably resources out there that are like these are the things to look out for when you're about to get scammed, right? And I think that my my dad, God bless him, he as he's getting older, I feel like he's more and more likely to be scammed by somebody on the phone. And I'm going to paste a piece of paper to his friggin' forehead and be like, "Yep, so look in the mirror and ask yourself these questions. Like what are they asking for? What kind of information? Do not give them this information. And like there create a system for yourself to make sure that you're learning from the right people. You're not going to get scammed, right? And like I think that this podcast kind of started slanting towards like mentorship relationships, and it's not all mentorship relationships. It could also just be people that you're consuming their content like through YouTube or something, right? But for the mentorship relationships where they have like you're paying a lot for their time, uh, like even like therapists, right? Therapists are a very like commonly um, pushed form of mentorship and you take their advice and whatever. I remember going to a therapist and just being like, wow, why in the hell would I ever listen to this person? Who's paying $300 an hour for this dude? Like, this person doesn't have what I want, doesn't have what I want, is incentivized to have me keep coming to him so he makes more money, doesn't really share my set of values. So it was like pretty easy to disqualify that person's advice. Now, because there was another person involved, I still had to go for a little bit the information caught up to that person. But like, you have to look at what their incentives are and the values and like all of and your gut, right? Like, do they have what I want? The person did not seem confident, did not seem happy. Why would I listen to that person? Like, they didn't walk the path I wanted. They don't have the results I want. Why would I listen? And I think that people don't factor that in for the therapy relationship, which is crazy to me. It's crazy to me because I've met people who are therapists and life coaches like out and about. Most of them are struggling. Why would I listen to them? Like they don't have the life I want. Why would I listen to them? This person has no context for me. Why would I listen to them? And I think that I'm going to say something controversial. So I think that therapists or therapy in general is slanted towards being better for women. And I watch somebody go and end up in a therapy relationship, and then they became somebody that I don't like as much anymore. And not because they're being abrasive or anything, but just because their worldview got more negative, they got more confrontational, and it's standing up to people, but it wasn't. It was just the the feeling of being angry is comforting to people sometimes. And it's higher than feeling depressed, right? You feel depressed, that feels way worse than feeling angry. Feeling helpless feels way worse than being angry. And so they ended up with a therapist that made them very angry at the world. And I just was like, is it better than where you might have been before? I don't know. The person did not seem depressed. They did not seem like anxious or unresolved. And then they ended up becoming worse overall because they listened to the wrong person's advice. And it's not somebody that had a lot of alignment with their values. It didn't have a lot of context for having similar enough lives that the advice applied to the person who sought the therapy. So anyway, just be careful out there, guys.
Yeah, you got to look for the glove that fits. I mean, it goes both ways, right? This is my toxic trait, is like saying paradoxes constantly and be like, it's true, but it's not true. And I'm going to do it again. Is like, you have to find the person that fits for you, but you have to make sure that you're not delusional about what fits you. So you have to be restrictive in who you seek guidance from, and make sure that you want that guidance, but then you need to make sure that you're not so blind that you're only taking guidance from people that are giving you exactly what you want and it's not actually going to benefit you. So it's tough out there. But I mean, just to like wrap up that, I think we talk so much about the gut here, and the values is like, use your gut. Your gut counts. Like, there's something that your gut can tell you, but then back it up with all these other things. Okay, I have a bad feeling here. Is it a values alignment? Is it the incentives seem off? Like, then start bringing in this logic and see where things line up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that we've kind of covered everything. So do you have anything to say to wrap it up?
I think the only other thing maybe to touch on that I think is, it's been a little bit newer to me, especially when I'm thinking about trying to create content and like teach other things, is the level of how far ahead they are of you. If somebody is so far ahead of you in their journey, it may be hard for them to look back and remember where you currently are. You know, the more experience somebody has, of course, there's going to be other, metrics that go up with that. Like they have more experience, they've seen more opportunities or more situations. Maybe they have more experience teaching, so there's going to be value there too. But don't discount the person who's just one or two steps in front of you because they were just you, right? Like they can be in the same frame of mind that that you currently are, and that can go a long way.
Okay, yeah, I'll add a couple points to this, and then we'll probably wrap it up. So when somebody is way far ahead of you, that doesn't mean that they have completely lost touch with where it is right now. Somebody who's a couple steps ahead of you, for sure, has the context to understand where you're currently at. That's the value of the one or two steps ahead thing. But the people who are a few steps ahead, if they have clients that are going through the current environment and they're succeeding, then you could probably trust that person. And you have like the testimonial backup and all of that stuff. So you have to be sure that they understand the context of what you're trying to do and an environment that is actually relevant to where you're trying to do it. So yeah, anyway, that's a great point to wrap it up. So yeah, learn lessons, apply all of these lessons and frameworks to your decision making to keep yourself learning from the right people, right? So yeah, understand that context.
Nailed it.